Hello, this is Will Faber from Art to Ride, and today we're taking a look at Cody with her horse Tucker. Tucker is a 19-year-old Morgan, and what we're seeing now is Cody just a few days ago, and he's been here for just under a year. He's a 19-year-old Morgan. When he came here, another one of these horses that you would have thought no one would bother with. His head was straight in the air, completely sway-backed. Completely overdeveloped underside of his neck, and anything that you touched him he just had a panic about and spooked continuously and bucked and kicked out continuously and was just a very unhappy old guy, but what a solid old guy. As soon as we got him beginning to stretch, he just immediately changed. It's literally almost like overnight as soon as he got into the stretch, and he was one of those horses that was extremely resistive to the stretch. Now, after I show you this little clip of how he looks now, we're going to go back and have a look at some earlier video of him, and you'll get a little bit of an idea of what he was like when we started. But you can see here now he just has that, once in a while he'll have a little, and if anything startles him, you'll see that he has that reaction to just throw his head up in the air because that's all he knew. And he still does that even now. When you try to stop him, he just puts on the brakes and throws his head back into your lap like as hard as he can, or did. So he's on the verge of getting over that now. And once again, it's just like right there, you see how that happens. And the only way to deal with it is just don't make a big deal of it. You just go back to what you're doing. You just send him back into that comfortable place again. And once again, the beauty of what we're doing here is showing horses a way that allows them to move comfortably so they become relaxed in the work. That's what it's all about. And you can just imagine a poor little horse like this. He's only about maybe 15 one hands. Being able to carry somebody around with his collapsed back, they sort of learn to get along that way, but of course then the physical discomfort comes in. So that's why people don't see it in the very beginning, because they think, oh, look how great my training is and how well this horse is doing. Well, and it goes along pretty good until the horse's back starts to hurt, or the neck starts to hurt, or the pole starts to hurt, or whatever the case may be. And then they start to resist, and the people just don't put it together that it was the overall, accumulative effect of their training. It isn't just because this just now happened because, I had bad footing or whatever the case may be. But if you look how lovely he goes here now, stretching into that contact, and look how she has her hands up in the air, and that's what you want to do, because this is the kind of horse he was extremely broken over in the neck. So he was the kind of horse who had that kind of, V-shaped neck, where the neck went straight up and then was bent in the middle just over completely at the third and fourth vertebrae. So a very, very bad break. But you can see how now that even is really almost gone compared to what you'll see in the previous videos from an earlier time. And what a great job she's doing here. So that's why she has to bring her hands up in the air, because if she takes backward contact, a horse like this is always going to curl behind the bridle. So that's why we have to get our hands out in front of us with these kind of horses and let them sort of drop into the contact, because we can't take back at all without breaking at the third vertebrae. Now you also notice that, she's a little bit in a chair seat here, and that's something that you just have to get by with. This horse is very difficult to fit. She doesn't have a fantastic saddle, but, she makes it work enough. But that's the kind of thing that, she's riding it as best she can on this horse, and as best that saddle can fit on this horse. So, once again, for my money, it's always more about, being effective. You always have to know these things, and she's looking at other saddles and, that sort of thing, and trying to replace this as her finances allow her to do so. But you get my point, is that it's more important to be effective, and you'll keep trying to stretch up and back, whereas the problem is, she has her heels down nicely there. At times she brings them up, but she puts them back down. But you see what I'm talking about. There's just no other way for her to sit in that particular saddle with his back so badly conformed. And this is much better than it was. Now, the interesting thing that you'll see here also is that she does not look, she looks a little bit size-wise big on him at the moment, but not badly so. But you'll see in the earlier videos how much smaller he looks. She was even commenting on that herself. So now we're going to go back and have a look at, not exactly the very beginning, because I don't have clips of that, but a few days into us working here. So Karen had first worked with him at a clinic up in Napa before she came down here, and the horse was extremely, extremely difficult. So, and got her to the other side of much of it. So this isn't the very beginning, but you can just basically see how tight the horse holds himself. In this shambone here, he's just most of the time bracing up into it. And this is not even, once again, it took days just even to get to this point here. We had many days where I only just worked in one direction just to get him to saw off and to walk and to keep coming back for the walk. So we're a little ways into it here, but you can still see that underside of his neck there, and see that desire right there every time you try to stop him, how he braces that neck upwards, and that's what he would do anytime you made any kind of downward transition or touched the reins or whatever. It was just literally hollow his back out and pull his neck at you and bend it over from the middle of the neck. So Cody's done a really great job with him to get him to where he is now with the video that you just saw. It's taken a lot of patience. But once again, what we always hope to show all of you is how, here's one that's 19 years old, and you can see that it's changing physically dramatically. So once again, if you're not dead, you can try to improve, and you should be able to some degree. You can see here now he's just beginning to stretch, but now he still wants to just kind of go up and back, that is up and down. See how every time he comes around a corner there, he just braces up against that shambone. And if you look at the legs, you can see how they're kind of falling out behind as he trots. They don't look together. And once again, this is improved from where we actually started with him. But once again, you see how there's that disconnect. Every time the neck tries to pull up, you can literally see how the hips almost rotate backwards, which is exactly what they do because the horse is, cracking its back downwards. So the hind legs begin to get left out behind. It's a really good one to look at. You can see the deeper he stretches, you can really see how the hocks begin to come forward. So he's also one of those horses that just was a nervous wreck. He's a cribber. He has those kind of nervous stall habits, and he used to just, just looked miserable all the time. And now he's looking quite happy. His body is changing dramatically. And as you can see from the first little clip that we saw, he's really just starting to look like he enjoys the work. I think everyone enjoys, it's like a person, if you've ever gotten yourself in the zone, so to speak, as a runner, as they talk about, or even as a weightlifter or whatever it is, if your work is at the right tempo, that is, if you're concentrating on your workout. And that's something, I want to think about that relative to people as well, and horses, What you want to do is have a very focused workout, that you stay focused throughout your entire workout on what you're doing, as opposed to the kind of workouts that we see where people, even if they're running, they zone out, instead of being into the feeling of their body, functioning correctly underneath them, And that's what we want to get to. So you can't get to that place by stopping and starting and stopping and starting, and having a lot of interruptions. See, now he begins to stretch a little bit more here. But once we get in that zone, we enjoy it. So it's that feeling, it's that expression of just beginning to relax your body. Everyone knows how good that feels who's ever felt that. Well, it's the same thing for the horses. There was a study that someone did. I just saw a little article about it on one of the sites here recently about how they proved that actually, just like with runners, that when horses stretch down, they actually it increases their endorphin rush, that they get, just like a runner gets. So exactly the same thing. So it's been proven scientifically that that is exactly what happens. And I think we all love that feeling of physicality, as living beings. Think about that. And when you get in the zone like that, and you really just feel physical, and you're enjoying the feeling of that physical, where your thought and your mind is kind of out of the picture, and you feel like you're kind of moving through space effortlessly. Well, it feels great, and it's kind of almost hypnotic and meditative, which it is. And once again, just like for a human being, it does the same thing for a horse. So you can see once again how when he stops there, immediately the neck jerks upwards and backwards, and he stops and kind of splays out behind. So we're going to watch another little clip of him from this direction now. And you can see that was kind of his old reaction to everything. He lives one of these horses, for as swayback he could just stand on his front end, so to speak, and just kick straight up and out. It was just amazing that Cody was able to stay on this horse and live as long as she did. She really does, she really learned to balance on him, or I don't think she'd be with us today, because this horse would have launched someone who did not know how to balance over the center of gravity. So that was him back then. So now here he is a little while later, being lunged by Cody. Now look how completely different the horse looks here. This is probably 8 months later, something like that. But look at the neck, and look how nicely the neck has developed. Look how evenly the horse is swinging. Still using the shambone. But we actually just got him the other day where he actually, for the first time, starting to use him without the shambone, without anything, he just goes right into the stretch. But look how beautifully you can begin to see now. If you remember how that look behind, once you can see, and you can see this swing, and you can see how beautiful horses are when those legs swing together, how different that is. That's what they meant by horses should be in rhythm. That means the two ends of the horse being in rhythm together. And once you see that, as many people are beginning to, to find out, once your eyes have been opened, you go to these horse shows and you look online and you see these great riders that you're winning all these awards, and you go, well, wait a minute, these dancers are not together. Like, where's the music and all this? And it's wonderful that so many of you now are beginning to be able to see this. And hopefully we'll be able to change a lot of horses' lives for the better, and a lot of people's as well, and save a lot of lives, I don't think anybody goes into riding, wanting to strap straps on an animal with themselves covered with, whatever protective gear, and kind of hope for the best while they pull and push. I mean, once you discover how to ride correctly from the back to the front, that's all this is. It's that basic, simple concept that, the old masters were always talking about. But unfortunately, as I said, because of the historic fact that after World War II, we lost all this great riding, and it just became this commercialized thing that all became about how fast can we make more of them, instead of the quality of them. But look at this horse himself. As I was saying, now he doesn't even look like a Morgan anymore. Now he's starting to look like a nice thoroughbred horse. Look how nicely he's swinging over. That neck has changed completely. And what I saw, often you can actually see there's a little bit of thrust beginning to happen now. That is, you can see that the hind leg is what's propelling the horse. And that's what we always want to have happen, no matter what gait you're in. That includes piaffe and passage. It always must come from behind. It's the back end lifting the horse and pushing it forward, even in the walk. So you can see even in the downwards transition there, how nicely he just came back to a nice walk instead of what he would have done in the past, which would have been to just jerk his head straight up in the air and immediately put on the brakes. I don't know who taught him that along the way. But Cody just, she did the best she could until she found us, but now that she has, she's doing a wonderful job. And, I love it when people are devoted enough to an animal like this to do. I mean, this horse has traveled all over the world with her. I mean, it's come from Alaska anyway. But you get the idea that, people go, why would you spend that kind of money on a horse like this? And you do that because, they're a living creature who, no matter what they are going to give you, once we treat them like this and we begin to see what they can be, you can not only really enjoy them as pets, so to speak, and entities to be around, as long as you do that correctly, and that is, always being the boss, so to speak. But, that we can do this thing together that we can both really enjoy, instead of the idea that, this is all about me and you're out here to be my little slave. Well, the problem is, and this is why people find slaves always revolt, and that's why people get hurt with horses, If horses don't trust you and they're forced into doing whatever they're doing, there always comes that moment when they just go, I'm not going to do it. I'll take the beating or whatever the case may be. And, or they get in a situation like so many of these, they get so used to everything being enforced that they will try when they shouldn't try. In other words, a horse that knows it can't make it over a jump It's much better that they stop rather than they fall through the middle and flip over on the rider. But these horses that have been forced to do everything, they're just scared to death. So they're going to jump even in fear, even when they know in their hearts, which is, that they shouldn't, because they don't understand. Horses usually don't jump because they don't understand what to do with what is in front of them. So if they force them, it's only a matter of time before they jump, and then they make, even though they shouldn't have, and of course they fall through the middle of the fence and flip over on the person who's hanging on the reins, and accidents happen, and that's the way it goes. But so many people are getting hurt these days for that very reason. But once again, if the horse trusts you, and you trust it, I want a horse to, if it really doesn't think it can make it over the fence, I'd rather it stop, believe me, and that would be my fault. And I would go back and then school the horse. I would think to myself, okay, well, this horse wasn't educated enough to jump this fence. So instead of beating it up to jump this fence and scaring the hell out of it, I need to go back and do this other work that will allow the horse to have an education that when it comes to a jump like this, the next time, it will know what to do and it will go. Because horses that are trained correctly, when they understand what their job is, will do the job because they're not enslaved in it, if you get my point. So anyway, what a beautiful job she's done here with this horse. And you can even just see the trust in his eyes. He was one of these ones that just had the eyeballs rolling in the sockets like all the time when you saw him. And now the eyeballs have relaxed, and he actually seems to really enjoy the work. Now here is an earlier little clip of her riding only in the walk here in the early days. And what you'll see here, he can barely even support her at this point. But you can see how stiff-legged he is behind, how the step is really short. But he is beginning, so this is the point I would say it's okay to start riding. This is what we did. He's now at about that point, and that was after that last lunging that we did. This is starting to look like something, as I like to say, that you could get on and ride. If I wanted to get on and ride, okay, this is like something that's going to be calm. It's developed enough. It looks like it can carry me. It understands the aid, so it's calm and relaxed. There's so many needless accidents that happen with horses that people just don't understand these steps. As I said, if you know how to walk, trot, and canter reasonably well, you can train any horse if you just take these steps that I'm showing you. I literally have done it with wild horses off the range, you name it. But if you just wait for these steps, when that step's there, you just don't try to go on. But that's what usually causes most accidents, that with people get themselves in positions with horses, they think the horse is under control, for instance, and then they realize, no, the horse wasn't really under control. It just got used to the environment you were in. It wasn't really in the aids. And then, of course, now you're in a new environment, or a new horse shows up, or whatever the case may be, and the horse goes out of its mind. So you can see here now he wants to curl back a little bit. And that's what we're trying to always avoid. And you can see in that the first video that we did here how much longer his neck was. So just what we're looking for there, remember what we're looking for is he's done a few leg yields. Now we're just starting to do a little bit of shoulder fore. That's all it is. We don't call it a shoulder in, but it is. Someone mentioned the other day, well, what is it, all this argument about the leg yield? Well, in the classical school, they just called everything a shoulder in. The reality is it's just the developmental aspect of the shoulder in. Where is it? You could call basically anything in which you displace the shoulders to the inside, and you're now stepping underneath the body to some degree, a shoulder in of some type or other, or developing one. So, but we tend to think of that as just being a little shoulder forward. Now you can see here he does it really quite nicely. Now he's even beginning to bend on this side a little bit, and you can see how much longer and out he is through the neck that time. So that was a huge improvement over the first one. But you can still see that he's kind of walks along here. He doesn't, he's just at the edge of what he's capable of doing, keeping that rhythm. You can still see, look how much more the dip is behind the saddle there in this picture. And you can see how when he comes to the corner there, how he kind of short steps. Because even for this is difficult for him at this point. But remember what I said also before about how much smaller he looked. If you look at this picture now, at the very end, I'm going to show you the original video that we went through to show you where they're at now. And you can just kind of see how much beyond this he has now filled up a little more. Same issue, once again, as I talked about before with him. That's why she has to bring her hand so high, because you can't take any back contact because he's going to pull. You see there, this horse was extremely broken in the neck. But it's always wonderful to see when you see these horses that people think are mental basket cases. They've usually just been driven crazy by being asked to do things, and in a way that is physically impossible for them, just like you would, and they're expected to do it over and over again. So calming down nicely. But now let's go back and have a look at this is now from just a couple of days ago. And once again, look at the difference in the neck, how much less break there is in the neck after watching those videos. And as I said, it looks like there's more horse underneath her now than there was then. As I said, Cody's done a wonderful job of being able to ride this horse as she's done. She's shown a lot of talent in this. This was a very difficult horse in the beginning. We don't even. If I have some clips down the road and I find some of the earlier rides, but he literally, and you never knew it was coming, was first trying to ride him. He literally would just kick his legs straight up in the air, and Cody did a wonderful job of staying on him. As that's the importance of staying back a little bit. Now, once again, as we talked about previously, as she gets her saddle thing improved here and his back improves, her legs will just come back underneath her. But as we want to always think about, if we're getting the job done however we can, and understand that a lot of things, you can't get a horse to stretch consistently like she's doing here unless she's in some kind of balance. It just it won't work. That is an independent balance. Whether her legs are a little in front of her or not, it's always better to be a little behind the motion than to be ahead of the motion, remember. We never want to ride ahead of a horse's motion because then we really can't influence them at all. But it's perfectly fine to ride behind the motion a little bit at times, as she kind of has to here, to kind of help him up. And once again, kind of lighten the seat a little bit. The more we stretch up and back, the more the horse tends to want to reach forward as it feels us stretch up and back. But what a great job she's done here with him. And you can just see, as I said, he's turning into a thoroughbred, kind of. Like he came here looking like a little hackney pony that was completely sway back. And now he's turning into a thoroughbred with Cody's great help. So she's done a great job here. And you learn so much when people want to buy their first horses in their beginning and they really want to learn how to train. Well, when you learn how to train these kind of horses, and you really get an idea for what it is, because you can clearly see it's so clearly that because you're not being fooled by a lot of just extravagant movement because the horse is such a fabulous piece of horse flesh. But so many of them would be so much more fabulous if they were actually trained, in this manner rather than cranked into a frame. But you really see it with these horses and actually what you see when all these upside down horses come to us, they come to us from people who were training in that other way, and they go to these. But it's just like if you don't have one of those $1 million movers and you try to crank it together, you end up, with a more apparent mess sooner to the untrained eye, if that makes any sense. So, because they all end up the same way, hollow and cranked over and broken in the neck. But how beautiful this one's starting to flow over the ground. It's going to be really fun to watch him develop. I mean, at 19 years old, there seems to be no stopping him. When he came, he really looked like, a pasture ornament with a big fat hay belly sticking out and sway backed and ewe-necked and very angry and frustrated all the time. And he really looks like he's beginning to enjoy his life, which is what should be all of our goals, right? In the new year here. By the way, this is probably the last video I'll do before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everybody out there, and especially to Cody. I've been trying to get to this video for her for a long time. I was waiting for him to get to this position right here, and we've achieved this. And this has been under a year. This horse has been here in under a year, and he's basically gone from an unrideable, physically looking like, few people would have thought this horse would be able to get to this stage here where he is now. But you see how possible it is. At 19 years old, completely sway backed, broken over in the neck and a cribber, and look what he's turned into here by just a little understanding of how it ought to be done. So great job to Cody. She's turning out to be just a wonderful rider. Of course, she's in our associate trainer program. So Merry Christmas to all from Art to Ride.